Very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. This really came out of a visit I made to the Oxford yacht when it was being presented with an award or accreditation, and John and I talked about the need for me to talk to the yachts about RJC, and I think you produced an amazing conference. I'm going to stay here till 12 noon. I'm really hijacking your conference in this way because you've got such an impressive array of yachts represented here that I would like the opportunity over coffee to meet as many of you as possible. I'm also very pleased to be speaking under your chairmanship, Graham. Your reputation at YJB is still very high. He wasn't fired. The service on the board is for a maximum of 6 years, and the board is rotated, but the work you did and your reputation is still very much valued. And I'm also very pleased that Tim Chapman's going to be speaking from the University of Ulster, because ever since I've been involved in this area, people have said, oh, well, they do this much better in Northern Ireland. So I'll be interested to hear that developed. One thing that always puts me on alert is when people say that the thing is being twittered. I'm of a generation that is still only coming to terms with some of these new technologies. When I became a minister in 2010, one of the first things I did was at a Liberal Democrat conference, did a breakfast meeting with about 20 people there. And talking about what we were doing, and we then had ideas of a rehabilitation revolution, Ken Clark and I, and we were going to produce legislation, and I was asked whether the legislation was progressing well, and I said, yes, it's progressing very well. The only danger to it is if the little elves in number 10 start hanging baubles on it like a Christmas tree. And then finish the meeting. First, as I came out of meeting, phone your private office. Phone the private office. A very kind of panicky private secretary said, what's this about you making an attack on the number 10 policy unit? And I said, I've never made any attack on the number 10 policy unit. Well, Press Association are running that you're calling them a lot of Christmas elves hanging baubles on a Christmas tree. Oh, I said, how did they find that out? Somebody tweeted it from your meeting and the PA picked it up. So you will hear no attacks on number 10 or the Cabinet Office or any of those other fine people that we have to work with. But Amnesty must have a safe room somewhere in here, so we could go there. But, Mr. Chairman, as John said, last Christmas Eve I received an email from the YJB to let me know that on that date we had less than 1,000 young people in custody. It marked a significant milestone in the development of our criminal justice system since the establishment of the Youth Justice Board by the Crime and Disorder Act 1998. In the 15 years the YJB has been operational, we have moved from a youth justice system which many at that time thought was a shambles to a coherent model of multi-agency cooperation based on strong central leadership by the Youth Justice Board, combined with a genuinely local model, the Youth Offending Team, which is holistic in approach and rooted in the communities they serve. I'm here today because during that same period, restorative justice has moved from being an interesting add-on to our criminal justice system to being part of the mainstream in approaching the challenges that face all of us. We still have some way to go in England and Wales, and as I say, in Scotland and Northern Ireland, it is more firmly established. Last March, I had the opportunity to visit New Zealand, where restorative justice is a universally mandated process in all juvenile crime. Nor is it only since I came to the YJB that I've become a fan of restorative justice. In 2012, speaking at the AGM of the All-Party Penal Affairs Group, when I was Minister of State for Justice, I said this: I am an ardent supporter of the principles of restorative justice. It offers an opportunity not only to assist the rehabilitation of offenders, but to give victims a greater stake in the resolution of offences and in the criminal justice system as a whole. Victim-led restorative justice can allow us to make inroads into the reoffending cycle, with the triple benefits of victims avoiding the trauma of future crimes, the taxpayer not having to foot the bill of more crime, and a rehabilitated offender making a positive contribution to society. That was me in 2012. And whilst I in no way resile from that emphasis on the victim in the process, I've become increasingly aware, since working at the YJB, that the perpetrator can be themselves victims. I also take pride that it was on my watch the MOJ provisions in the Crime and Courts Act 2013 included provisions in statute, I believe for the first time, making clear that the courts can use their existing power to defer sentence post-conviction to allow RJ activity to take place. And I pay tribute to the effective lobbying on that matter by the former Lord Chief Justice, Lord Wolfe, himself a good friend and keen supporter of the Restorative Justice Council. So the Restorative Justice Council can take pride that largely because of its campaigning and advocacy, restorative justice is playing an increasingly important role, not only within the criminal justice system, but in care homes, educational establishments, hospitals, and other sectors where its approach to conflict resolution seems appropriate. In many ways, restorative justice is an old idea with a new name. To me, it represents a return of the wisdom of viewing conflict and the consequences arising from it as an opportunity for individuals to learn and grow from their actions. It empowers victims and communities. It recognizes the value for all concerned of the offender acknowledging their acts, showing remorse for the consequence of the damage they've caused, and expressing a desire to reintegrate into the society, the community that they have harmed. But in its present manifestation, it is now more professional, and RJ, when it does take place, occurs with expert preparation and implementation. And I know that a lot of that expertise is here today, representing the very different facets that restorative justice involves. I'm very pleased to say that the Youth Justice Board, working through the yachts, is playing an increasingly important role in promoting restorative justice across England and Wales. To ensure the quality delivery of RJ across the youth justice system, the YJB is working to implement it via many channels, from referral orders to out-of-court disposals, the other community orders, custody and resettlement. We have undertaken a range of work to promote it and also provide better victim support. Over the past 2 years, we've granted a total of $632,000 to train, as RJ conference facilitators, 2 members of staff in every yacht. These staff have then trained all referral order panel staff in line with statutory guidance to ensure young people subject to ROs can be brought together with their victim to achieve constructive outcome. I'm pleased to say that by the end of March this year, over 7,000 staff and volunteers will have been trained in this way. Going further and using funds provided by the Ministry of Justice through their victim surcharge pot, the YJB has also secured 2.15 million to be granted to youth offending teams by the end of March. The purpose of this grant is to increase opportunities for victims to participate in safe and effective RJ activities and to further develop yacht practices in line with standards set by the Restorative Justice Council. With this extra resource currently at our disposal, the YJB is encouraging more yachts with more advanced action plans to consider using their grant funding to gain accreditation and work with partners in the community to do the same. We now have 8 yachts applying for the Restorative Justice Council's RSQM, 38 yachts with staff applying for their practitioner accreditation, and 24 yachts providing training to partner agencies such as schools, children's homes, and the local police. Interesting figures, because that shows you've still got quite a way to go. But whilst the YJB has been able to oil the wheels and set them in motion, it's in the yachts themselves that have done the hard graft to design and deliver many of the restorative justice initiatives to ensure that it's effective and successful in their areas. Thanks to them, the YJB has many examples of effective practice to share to help youth justice practitioners everywhere. I'll give just 2 examples. In Northamptonshire, the Youth Offending Service, the now accredited practitioners create a process to ensure that when planning and delivering face-to-face restorative justice, all the issues presented by a case were considered and addressed appropriately to make the session effective for all participants. I understand that the RJC assessors themselves praised this innovative effect and asked for it to be disseminated as good practice. In Essex, YOT workers created a victim awareness workbook containing a series of exercises that practitioners now use with young offenders to help them develop empathy, increase their awareness of their victims, and understand the impact their offending has on others. Those of you who have heard me speak before will know that since becoming the chairman of the YJB, I have set out my personal desire to see the current youth justice system go further in tackling the problems of youth offending by going upstream and downstream of the actual periods of offending. It's a very simple reality that by the time a young offender stands before a youth magistrate, we may be 10 years too late in addressing some of the issues involved in the boy or girl committing that offence. That's why I'm eager to learn the lessons from the Troubled Families Initiative and other early interventions to see where actions can be taken early and effectively. It should, by using focused interventions, be able to cut crime off at its headstream, and I see restorative justice as having an invaluable part to play in that task. There are benefits to be gained downstream too, by making sure that an offender has the necessary support and help to avoid a return to reoffending. Just as we can see the danger signs upstream in various kinds of dysfunctionality and deprivation, so we can see the need for the support, training and mentoring which will help the ex-offender to make a success of a crime-free life. Here again, I'm convinced there's a real overlap between restorative justice and other parts of the rehabilitation process. Already, RJ techniques are known to have a positive impact on reducing conflict, antisocial behaviour, and helping to prevent young people at risk of turning to a life of crime. As John mentioned, restorative processes are increasingly used in schools and children's care homes to address conflict and build empathy and understanding and strengthen relationships between young people. The value of adopting this approach to prevent harm has also been recognised through Ofsted inspections. Schools who participate have found that the restorative justice approach has led to improved behaviour, a better learning environment, and increased educational attainment. I want to acknowledge those yachts who are working to facilitate this in their community. For example, Kent Youth Offending Service has been working with schools to get young people who are experiencing conflict to come together so that they can talk about how they feel and why and try to resolve the situation. To increase the take-up of this initiative, Kent YOS has developed educational materials to inform young people directly about what they can expect when they take part in RJ, and also to promote to parents and carers how RJ approaches can work to the benefit of their child and their school. As I've said and already referred to, imaginative RJ action downstream, post-custody, can have a similar impact on the unacceptably high rates of reoffending. The YJB is working in partnership with the Ministry of Justice on new resettlement initiatives to improve through-the-gate mentoring, positive assistance on employment and housing, and continuing treatment for the many factors such as mental health issues, substance abuse, and dysfunctional family setups that can trigger children and young people into an offending pattern. But we all know that the resettlement of young offenders doesn't begin on their release from custody. Proper planning and focus is vital from beginning to end of a young person's time in the youth justice system. It's only with such a dedicated and focused approach, and with the YJB and its yachts continuing to work in partnership with many agencies involved in youth justice, that we can, together, hope to reach these hardest to reach offenders. Working with young persons while they're in custody to address issues relating to victims in the community can also be an enabler for their effective resettlement. So it follows that having custodial staff trained in restorative justice techniques would create more opportunities for victim engagement prior to a young person's release. The YJB has recently proposed taking a whole unit approach to restorative justice within the establishment of the youth secure estate. And we are actively considering how this could be built into new custody specifications as part of our work with the Ministry of Justice to transform youth custody. By extending restorative justice training to the secure estate, we hope to further support the staff responsible for young offenders in custody as they respond to the challenges of managing a difficult and sometimes violent cohort. There is always a danger of those of us who work in the youth sector being accused of putting the consideration and needs, the rights, if you will, of offenders over and above those of the victims of their crime. But we should all be very clear, it is only because of the participation of the victims of crime that the restorative justice has seen and continues to see its successes. And it's important to equally recognise the enormity of the journey that some victims of crime have to undertake in order to be able to achieve personal satisfaction from the process. I'm reminded of a quote from the American author C.R. Strahan. He said, "Forgiveness has nothing to do with absolving a criminal of his crime. It has everything to do with relieving oneself of the burden of being a victim, of letting go of the pain, and of transforming oneself from being a victim to a survivor. It's the sacrifice that victims, survivors have to make that truly touches and inspires so many of us, and spurs us on forward to help making restorative justice a success. And those who have suffered the very worst consequences of crime deserve nothing less than our greatest respect and appreciation for the work they do to help to achieve these successes." Now, I'm mindful that many yachts are represented here today. As I said, it's a very impressive attendance list. So this is where, just for a couple of minutes, I hijack your conference. And to say something about that has been helpfully announced on the eve of our Youth Justice Convention, that the Ministry of Justice is going to take a stock take of yachts. This isn't an inquiry or any other names of it, it's a stock taking. And as I said before, and I'll say it again now, I see this stock taking as an opportunity, not a threat, and use it to showcase the good work that you do and how you do what you do benefits not only the young people you work with, but the communities you serve, restorative justice is just one part of your work. Some of you will already know that in parallel with the stock taking, I and my fellow board members will be visiting yachts to complement the evidence being gathered through the MOJ stocktake, to look at what works and what we can improve by talking to and engaging with key staff and managers at local level. But neither the stocktake itself nor the board activities will mean that we can visit every yacht. So if any of you have views and ideas, please feed them into me, because it's going to be important in how we deal with this. The stock taking will be on the desk of whoever is Secretary of State thereafter the May election. And it's obvious that whatever is developed in terms of policy within the MOJ and within the YJB, as John said, we're all going to be under the financial cosh. The next spending review is not going to be any more pleasant than previous ones. But what we've got to have is the confidence to state loudly and clearly that in circumstances where we have got to promote best practice, where we've got to find smarter ways of doing things, it's there that the holistic partnership philosophy, the yacht model, which the YJB has done so much to pioneer, comes into its own. So I want us all to demonstrate the examples of where we intervene early and imaginatively with young people on the cusp of criminality, and how that intervention can divert them from crime, where we help those who do end up in custody, where we deliver outcomes which continue to work through the gate and into the community. I want to be able to demonstrate clearly that we, working with our partners across the youth justice system, have a positive impact on reoffending. You and I know that through this work we can deliver savings for society. We can, as I said at the beginning, spare the victims of the trauma of crime. We can save the taxpayer the costs of incarcerating the repeat offenders. But as John said, we live in an age now where policy has to be based on evidence and proof of outcomes. And that's the task that I see for the board between now and that post-election period. I and the board and partners, including many here today, I hope, have every confidence in the yacht model. So let's leave no stone unturned as we provide that evidence and the proof of outcomes which underpins that confidence. Mr. Chairman, can I again thank the Restorative Justice Council for the opportunity not only to affirm my commitment to restorative justice and the work of the RSJ, but for your kindness and courtesy in giving me this opportunity to wash some of the YJB's clean linen in public. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.